Yo, what is up, everybody? My name is Kid Ikarus, and this is my podcast. My guest today is a fantastic hip hop and R&B artist. You can find his most recent single "Drown" over on Spotify. You can find his most recent video "Dark Side" over on YouTube. Please welcome Tui Da Shark.
Hey, what's happening, y'all? I love numerology, so
Yeah, you're reigning in the half a centennial right now. Yeah. Now I was thinking it's just another 10, but it's not just another 10. It's halfway to 100.
halfway.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah, right. So yeah, first off, I was thinking, what should we talk about? And I thought first question I wanted to ask is, when you get up in the morning and get out of bed, why do you do that? Why bother?
Why bother getting out of bed in the morning?
Yep.
Shit. Asking somebody with depression is kind of long story short, if I don't, who's gonna do it? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I have a vision, a dream, and a journey that only I can envision, only I can walk.
Okay.
If I sit around and hope these opportunities come my way, it's not gonna happen. You know what I mean? Nobody has ever made it anywhere by sitting on their ass.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So the motivation to move in the morning is my dreams, and obviously the people who are dependent on me, my children, my wife, my family, and a lot of my listeners and people who actually care about what they're listening to.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a number of reasons, but that's the main one. Is if I don't go get it, nobody's gonna get it for me. You know?
And what are those dreams for you? Like we're in a field where a lot of people have similar dreams,
Right.
but there's always something different. Like that success in music means something different for everybody else. So what does that look like to you?
For me, I think it would be the transitional phases that I've already set up for myself. I wanted to start it in music because that's what I'm most comfortable in.
Okay.
But the brand has always been seen to expand. We want Treyar and myself as Tui Da Shark to be household names. We want to be worldwide, and I want to do that by gaining some notoriety via the music first, and then moving into comedy and acting, and then finally ending with some directing so that I can put together the projects and the movies that I want to in the future. But there's a lot of goals and stepping stones along the way that I have for myself. One of those being winning a Grammy is one of them. And then also winning an Oscar, and I don't care what it's for. I don't care if it's...
You want to do the whole EGOT?
Well, I mean, not the whole. I mean, I do want to win a Tony, but that's not, I love Broadway. I love performing on stage. I love singing. I love acting, and Broadway kind of puts all of that together. However, Broadway is such a very niche market.
Yeah.
That it's, it's very old entertainment. New York has very few things that the rest of the world has to offer, and one of those things is Broadway, and being able to have, the string of shows along, I forget what street it's on. I think it's Broadway.
Yeah.
Broadway Street. Yeah, it makes sense. And just have a number of different shows. And not every Broadway show is a hit. There are a lot of shows that have been to Broadway that never really went anywhere else. And
there's
kind of
there's a lot
ground.
that are there's a lot also that are successes but without being hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that.
I mean, it happens with movies all the time. How many people actually watch the movies that win Oscars, but like they get like critical acclaim but not like widespread popularity?
Absolutely. And in saying so, they're just how the Academy, with new movies have like their clique of people who are almost like the A&Rs for movies. Like, oh, this one's good, this one's not. Of course, you have the circuits, and like Sundance is a really big festival, and different festival circuits that can help smaller projects get the funding they need to get to the vision that the director or the team may have. So Broadway is not much different in that aspect, but of course it has its own like procedures. nobody just jumps onto Broadway. Like
Yeah.
there's a whole tract that you have to go through before that. So for me, Tony is it's a dream of mine, but it's not a goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
So it's
get you.
something that I would love to do and love to be a part of, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, I need this to happen to continue on this path that I've set for myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know if I'd go for the whole ECAT, but the Grammy and the Oscar are definitely big
The
things
big
for me.
ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely big things for me.
You said Treyarch. I just want to
Mhm.
clarify. Is that a person? Is that a brand that you are
Treyarch is
building?
my brand.
Okay.
It's spelled capital TRES and then R. But
Okay.
it's Treyarch, like tre, like tres, also tre, like in the French. But I chose that and the weird spelling for a reason because different people might read it differently. Some
Mm-hmm.
people will say Treyarch, some people may say tres R, some people may say treasure, and it's all right. It's
Yeah.
all correct.
Okay.
But that's my brand. I got the business license probably I think in 2020, so it's actually my production company,
Okay.
and everything I do is typically under Treyarch.
Okay. And right now, is the bulk of that your music and your
Yes,
videos and
I
stuff?
am. Yeah, I'm the lone artist for
Okay.
Treyarch right now,
Yeah.
because I think that it's best to lead by example, and also there's
Yeah.
no better guinea pig than you
Mm-hmm.
because you're always available to you
Yeah.
whenever you want to be. I thought that if I were to accumulate artists, which I tried to do at the beginning of Treyarch, things just did not go very well.
Yeah.
Not that the artists were terrible people; they were all great, and I wish them well, all of them. It's just that my vision was a little different from theirs
Yeah.
in the progression of their artistry and just that journey. So it was never any hard feelings for the people that used to be involved with Treyarch who aren't anymore, but I just really wanted to consolidate the focus
Mm-hmm.
and get that foundation really strong first. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's horribly hard. It's horribly difficult to work with other people. Like it's be. I don't know how to say it right, but
Mm,
like you have to be aligned. You have to
yeah,
be on the same path, going the same direction, have the same aim in mind, and like the odds of actually running into somebody who has that same goal long term is difficult. Like short term,
absolutely.
like it's easy to like the way I like working with people on features
Mm,
is I like writing everything I can
yeah,
and then being like, all right, here's your section. Just hop on that.
yeah.
Because like any kind of actual discussion back and forth, it's always like, that's not really the vision I'm looking for on
Mm,
this. And like, I don't know about you, I'm super selfish with my art. Like if something doesn't align with the vision that I'm trying to create, it's like, oh, I just can't. I can't. I don't compromise well. You know
right.
what I mean? So like anytime if I want a feature on my thing, I'll write the whole thing and be like, all right, here's your section. Do what you want with that section. Like be on that. And then like likewise, if somebody wants me to feature on a song, I'm like, yeah, give me the song as much as you have. Tell me my section, and I will do the best of my ability to fill that spot and like match whatever vibe you're going
Right.
with whatever twist I can do honestly, you
Mm,
know? Cause like there's some songs where if somebody was like, get on this, I'd be like, I don't feel the same way about
right.
that you do, but I will try to twist it in a way that I'm not lying in my verse, but still
Right.
trying to meet your vibe, you know?
Yeah, that
Um,
artistic integrity I think is really important, and I agree
yeah,
with you in a lot of ways. I do think that you have to be on the same page with the people that you're working with, especially
yeah,
if it's just a one off. If you're doing one song together, you obviously want it to be a good experience and a good song. You want it
hmm
to have a great outcome. So without that communication, it's going to be really difficult to do that, especially, and I've run into this issue a lot, is when I thought the artist was dope. We had great conversations and built some rapport before getting in the studio. And then we get in the studio and the studio etiquette is just not there. They
yeah,
haven't listened to the beat, they haven't really thought about anything, and it basically becomes like the vultures in the Jungle Book. It's like, I don't know, what do you want to do?
yeah,
And it's just
yeah.
like,
That's
bro,
that's terrible.
yeah, because you want it to be a creative process. So
Yeah.
it's like, you're a creative, like, let's create together.
hmm
But like you were saying, I've also turned down songs where I've just been like, this is not on brand for me.
Yeah.
Like, I can't feel good about what I can just put out whatever and match the vibe, but it won't match my brand.
Yeah.
And people will hear this song and be like, wait a minute, in the last song, Tui was saying he doesn't fuck with this kind of energy, and now here he is on
Projecting
this
that
song.
kind of
Yeah,
energy. Yeah.
it's confusing for the brand, and I think a lot of people don't really have the vision of long term, and
Yeah.
they really just want to get on as fast as they can, but they don't know what that entails. They don't understand the work that has to go in, and have to present yourself and promote yourself in a way
Yeah.
that's going to reach the top tiers that are already so saturated with artists who are very well known and this and that.
I read this book when I was younger about record labels and how to grow a record label and stuff, and it talked about Sub Pop, Nirvana's label in the '90s, and how one of the things that helped them grow was that they only did grunge bands.
Right.
They only did alternative bands. And people think that what you want to do is cast the widest net so you can draw in the biggest audience. And they were like, no, when you're especially when you're starting out, what you want to do is find a very specific niche that nobody else is filling, and make sure everything fills that niche that you're doing, because then people know, they see your name on one album and they go, oh yeah, I liked that other album, this will probably be in the same vein.
Right.
Where if you cast a wide net, people are going to be like, why would I pick up the next? I don't know. I have to regain that trust with every project because like I don't know what it's going to be.
Right.
And sometimes some artists just go for that wide approach where they're like, I'm going to switch up my style. Nothing I do sounds the same. Well, then you're just inconsistent. Like now nobody has a reason to listen to your whole catalog. They want that, whatever that through line is, for it to be there and everything.
Right.
If you were to describe that through line in your work, how would you describe that?
Well, it's funny that you say, that they made it all to sound the same, because a lot of my songs, especially my EPs, the EPs I did, as their own little pet projects. This is a whole vibe within the EP. So everything in the EP, is similar.
Yeah.
But then you'll listen to another EP, it's still me, but the sound is completely different. Like if you take my project, The Dark Behind My Eyes, and then you go to what is it? Labor of Love. Two different projects. They were only dropped within, I think, a few months of each other, like 8 months or something like that. But they're two completely different projects.
Yeah.
One of them is focused directly on neurodivergency and my internal struggles. It's a very passion piece for me, The Dark Behind My Eyes. Whereas Labor of Love, also a passion project, but it's more about the pitfalls of over I want to say over romanticism in America. Like people put so much weight on love, finding love, loving, and partnerships, that the project speaks about how you can go through so many relationships and still not find what you're looking for. And realistically, the first love you should be seeking is self-love, because if you can't properly love yourself, you can't teach anybody else to properly love you. And if you don't know how to properly love yourself, in turn, you won't properly know how to love anybody else. So I said all that to say that, I do have different sounds, but it's still me. The message is still the same in a lot of ways, that it's still on brand. I still talk about things that most rappers may not talk about, and some of it may be funny and comical, as sometimes I'll spew a lot of the very serious stuff and do it in a trivial, joyous way.
Yeah.
Because that's how it feels sometimes, and my biggest thing about artistic integrity for me is staying true to myself. And I think that finding a niche is very, very important. It is mandatory. If you don't have that understanding of where you want to see yourself in the grand scheme of music and entertainment, it's easy to get lost in the noise. So finding that niche, developing your sound, it's all very, very crucial.
Yeah, I like that you specified like each EP, each project is its own thing that has its own sound between the tracks, but they are different from each other. Because I've mentioned on this podcast probably more times than I should, that I'm a huge Kanye and J. Cole fan, and they both do that where like every album sounds distinct from the rest of the albums, but each song on the album sounds similar, where you can
Right.
point out the vibe of each album and be like, yeah, everything on this album fits with this album. You couldn't take something off Forest Hills Drive and put it on KOD. Like it just
No,
wouldn't work.
Absolutely not.
And like I really enjoy getting into albums that are like that, because it lets me explore the themes and how they grow.
Right.
Where like if the tracks aren't interconnected, there's no growth. There's just separate little stories.
Right.
But if you chain them all together, then you get to see how things develop over time.
And you know what? I think that's really important. I think that point is really, really important in the music world for younger artists, because people will release albums when they really should be mixtapes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, yo, if you're just barring out on this entire thing, there's no real thing to tie this album together. Yeah. And a lot of people don't even understand the differences between, you know, an EP, an album, a studio album, a mixtape, an LP. You know, and they're all different for the reasons that they are.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a giant disconnect from what the music industry looks like and what the music industry actually is. So a lot of people will see the glamour and the star power and the cameras and the red carpets, and they'll be like, I want that.
Yeah.
But they don't see the late nights, the logistics, the moving from town to town on tour, you know, making sure we get there on time, the sound checks, you know, the hard drives going down,
some rehearsals.
Yeah, absolutely.
People ain't rehearsing.
Absolutely. And and when I mean the hard drives, like when the hard drives crash, and then you lose pretty much an entire thing that you've been working on.
This is my second hard drive this year. Mine crashed in like late February, and I freaked out because like it wouldn't my computer wouldn't sense that it was plugged in, and I was like, I just recorded like 3 episodes. I've got 3 hours worth of content that is gone now. I took it to Geek Squad and I was like, is there anything you guys can do to try and save this? And they were like, well, what we can do, we wouldn't be able to fix your hard drive. What we can do is if you get another hard drive, we can try and recover the information off of it. And I was like, all right, how much is that going to cost? They're like, about $100 and plus the cost of the hard drive. And I was like, all right, I'll see what I can try and figure out. So I ended up finding a program for $80 that does the exact same thing that they were going to do. And I just got a second hard drive. I was like, so these guys were just going to download this program and transfer the data. All right, I'm paying you guys an extra $20 because you can Google search how to take data off of your hard drive. They're not as specialized as they pretend to be.
Right.
But that's my little rant about hard drive. That's it. That's the deal with hard drive. Like that is the behind the scenes work. It's like hard drives crash sometimes. You gotta figure out how to recover that.
Right. And speaking on that, I want to pinpoint the accuracy of that, because a lot of people believe, especially in the music industry and the entertainment industry, that you need somebody else to do this thing for you so that you can get on. When in reality, if you figure out a way to do it yourself, it may take longer to build those connections and whatever, but it's so much more fruitful without having the middleman. Yeah. You know what I mean? And even though the cost was around the same, you know, you still saved $20 and you learned how to do this yourself just in case you may have this problem in the future.
And if my hard drive crashes now, like I have the other one because I was able to restore it afterwards. I just had to erase everything on it and reset it, you know, which means I can do that same process just back and forth between the two. Whereas if I didn't find the service myself I didn't find the program, I would be going back to them with that $80 each time to get it switched back and forth.
Absolutely.
Like, and that's the higher cost in the long run. Yeah. I like that. Like I do a lot of like my beats and stuff myself. And I do my album art myself. And like, it's all very low quality. It's all very rough, but, it gives it a cohesion that I wouldn't have if I was working with other people. And like, I like rough stuff. Like I like punk music. I like comic books and stuff that is people hanging out in their garage and throwing stuff together with whatever they have, you know? There's some beauty in that, I think.
Absolutely. I think there's an immense beauty in the ingenuity of man, like just
Yeah.
the workarounds that people do. I'm always so impressed when I see a lot of these things come out of places like Africa or the Philippines where they have literally built their own decks from scratch because they've
Yeah.
learned how to do the wiring and whatnot. And it may not look like much, but hey, that motherfucker works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you see that these really creative electric instruments that they're using that don't resemble anything else in the world, but because they've learned how to get the welding down and how to basically manipulate the sound as if they were using a Moog or a synthesizer. And it would just be like the simple thing I saw in, I think it was either Jamaica or somewhere in the Caribbean, where this guy had what looked like a cardboard box, but he had circuitry inside it. And then there was only just this little touchpad, and he had rigged it to where he had figured out where to place his fingers to stop, to switch between tracks and whatever. And he was DJing out of this cardboard box looking thing. And I was like, what? Like how?
Yeah.
How? You know, and I think that's just wonderful. I think it's beautiful. And I think that there is, like you were saying before, just something about the quality of, that this is raw. Like,
Yeah.
that this is uh, something that was made not only from the heart but from the dirt, like
Yeah.
out the mud. Like, they didn't have the resources that these big artists do have, but they still managed to put on a performance that could rival them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just I think that that's the beauty of creation in art, is that it's not necessarily about the biggest and the best and the shiniest with all the bells and toys.
Yeah.
It's about what you do with it.
Yeah. It's about like what you can express, however you can express it, as long as you're expressing it. I think that's one thing that I think I see some beginner artists struggle with, is they're not necessarily expressing things. They're doing what they think is good. They're trying really hard to make good music instead of trying really hard to make honest music.
100,000% right there. I think that's the nail on the head for sure. I think that, again, with that perception of what they think it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this leads to a lot of me butting heads with local artists and artists in my area, because you see the imitation and there's no realness behind it. There's no authenticity.
Yeah.
It's like you're literally copy and pasting what influenced you and then trying to regurgitate that, instead of taking that influence and inspiration and then using your voice to emulate how you feel.
Yeah.
It's definitely just products of environment a lot now. And unfortunately, with a lot of the misinformation about history, and especially here in America, people get it twisted a lot. And they'll be like, oh, that's hip hop. And I'm like, no, that's rap. In the barest sense of the word, like when it came around in the 1940s, rapping was just talking. And it's like, you're just talking, bro. You're not saying anything that hasn't been said before. And you're not doing it in a unique way, at the very least.
Yeah.
You're saying something uniquely that could reach other people that may feel the same way as you. And I think that's the whole point of music, is connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, like, that not saying anything new is like such a travesty. Like, it's so common to hear the same things over and over. And like, it doesn't have to be radical if it's new. Like, you could talk about some of the most boring stuff, but like, if I've never heard it before, I'm going to be interested at least. Like, you could be the most skilled artist technically, but if you're saying the same thing I've heard before, I'm just not going to be interested.
Right. Because it's going to remind you of something else. And like, oh, that bar reminds me of a similar bar from a better song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're distracting your listener from the music.
So you want to go into film and stuff.
Yes.
What are the film influences in your vision?
I am a huge cinephile. I love movies. Along with music, one of my primordial escapes from the hecticness of life
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes just the monotony of life. It's really easy to say, "Oh, this is my favorite genre," but I struggle with it because there are so many different things that I like about them. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
very old Hollywood head. Like I
Oh,
love,
really?
yeah, I love Hitchcock and a lot of the black and white movies that really changed the game in a lot of different ways because of the creativity of the director, because of the limited resources that they had, like old Stanley Kubrick. Not so much '90s Kubrick, like things got weird, but
I got an energy drink here if you would like one. I'm about to crack
oh,
one open.
nice, yeah, for
Swedish
sure.
fish, or I got red sour patch, and I got Swedish fish. Which one do
Either
you
is
prefer?
cool with me. I love them both.
All right, I'll give you the red sour patch. I'm feeling
Yes,
Swedish
sir.
fish.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So when I was younger,
Mm,
there was a like internet creator that I followed who mentioned Night of the Hunter, which is an old
mm,
black and white film, and like he was like, it's the greatest, one of the greatest movies ever made, and so like I was like, oh, this guy that I'm a fan of suggested this, so I'm gonna look it up and
right.
watch it. I hated it. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was boring, and so I take typically stay away from older films because I
Right.
expect them to be that. I also saw like bits of the original 13 Ghosts, which is another
Yeah.
movie that looks just like slow and
Hmm.
like not good. So I stay away from almost any black and white stuff. So I don't know anything good. What am I missing out on?
There are some good ones that I think that you would enjoy just because you're into kind of like the darker theme. This movie actually inspired the character of DC's Joker. It's called The
Oh,
Man Who
the
Laughs.
yeah, Man Who Laughs. I've
It's
heard of that.
creepy as fuck. And
Really?
yeah, yeah. And it's not jump scare creepy, scary like the horror movies today. It's very cerebral,
Okay.
and you find it just alarming because the character is smiling in the most uncomfortable situations because he can't help it. Like his face, you have to watch the movie, no spoilers, but there's a scene where he's crying because he's just so distraught because people are misunderstanding and misreading his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as somebody who can relate with that from a neurodivergent way of having to deal with trauma and then experiencing masking throughout the majority of my life,
Mm-hmm.
I I related a lot with the character. But it's black and white. There's very minimal music with a lot of the early black and whites because
Mm-hmm.
they really truly wanted to zero in on the emotion of the actor and whatnot. So I find that a lot of black and white actors are more skilled than their color counterparts, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to say there aren't great actors in the color era and whatnot because there definitely are. Sidney Poitier, definitely one of them who transitioned from the black and white into the color realm. Um,
I've heard that Freaks is very good. That's. It sounds like it would be in the same
I
vein as The Man Who
I have
Laughs.
actually I don't think I'm familiar with that
No,
one.
I've heard it's good. It's another black and white film
Yeah.
about freaks at a freak show,
Oh, okay.
and I think I've heard it's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't seen it. Yeah, I thought that black and white actors were known for kind of being goofy because they're from stage actors, and so they're very expressive and over the top, as opposed to like the more restrained delivery of like modern method actors.
Well, I think that that's more with silent film
Okay,
because that was where cinema pretty much started was silent film because
yeah.
they couldn't figure out how to merge the audio
Mm-hmm.
with the visuals at the same time. So what would happen was they would shoot the movie, send the movie to the orchestra, and then the orchestra would basically be like, "Okay, this is how I feel this scene should feel."
Yeah.
And of course, without music, movies are very painful,
Yeah.
very painful. You definitely have to have patience for some of these older ones, but color. I'm sorry. Silent films, the actors were silent, but the music definitely helped to push the story along,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that really aged well into what we see in media and movies now. You can't see a scene without music unless it's like a horror scene or a suspense scene where they use that silence as an adjutant.
Yo, have you watched Baby Driver?
I have, I have,
Oh man, I was gonna mention like 3 minutes ago of how much I love Edgar Wright's films, but
yeah,
thinking about music and them using silence, the lack of music to like point something out. There's like one scene near the end where he loses his headphones and all the music goes dead, and you're like, oh, there's been music playing for like the last hour and 15 minutes. So when it hits, you're like, oh, something, it's serious now. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, that movie is wonderful. All of Edgar Wright's films are some of my favorite films.
I'm a huge Guy Ritchie fan too.
Oh yeah. Guy Ritchie is excellent as well.
He's very funny in a lot of clever ways. You know, I think that it's great. Like, I enjoyed Snatch, I think, way more than I should have. But it's, you know, I think that he does a great job of bringing more flavor to what people know for European society. Yeah, especially in you know, post-industrial Europe. And when you're getting into like the 90s and 2000s, which was a really awkward 2 decades for the world, like figuring out how to transition from such great eras like the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, and then trying to keep things fresh. Like the 90s just felt very repetitive. Like you felt, I think that we got really cookie cutter, especially in America, but in a lot of other places like Europe and France and Italy, they're coming out with some crazy freaking movies. So I also love foreign film because they wild, man. Some of them definitely stay away from, because they some things just go super unbridled and just.
I feel like I enjoy some South Korean films.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah,
bro. East Asian filmography is. East Asian cinema, bro.
There's,
like, even going from martial arts movies.
I was gonna say, there's some great martial arts movies that are like modern and like not kung fu. They're like, there was The Raid. Have you seen The Raid?
You know what? I was just thinking that. I was just thinking
of The Raid. It's fantastic, and it's I don't think it's any of the typical countries people think of. I think it's like Filipino or Singapore.
It's Thailand and dang it, not Laos, but it's near Thailand.
Yeah. One of the southern East Asian countries.
So they actually, I think that studio was also behind Ong Bak, which was what launched Tony Jaa.
That's what inspired Izzy Adesanya. I've read. I don't know how true that is.
Izzy has a lot of inspirations, but he definitely does love East Asian culture. Shout out to the champ.
Yeah.
That was an amazing match, by the way. You
saw the rematch? So amazing.
Yo, I lost my voice screaming.
My neighbors definitely heard me. Like, I was, because as soon as he got hurt, my body was all tense, like, and then like he gets the knockout, I'm jumping up, shouting.
He wasn't hurt. Like, I thought he was hurt, and he was just, blowing smoke, and then he released the footage of him actually training this exact sequence. Yeah. Letting Alex get that confidence and then load up and drop those bombs like he does. Yeah. And then just coming back with the quickness. And it was that lead jab. It was very quick, but it was enough for him to miss his hook. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, once that little section of, he's not going to connect with this punch, and then he loaded up on his hook to return. And then
absolutely beautiful. I mean, you don't see people get knocked out that cold very often in the UFC. Like, you see them get wobbled and then the ref calls it off. You see him on the ground like hurt and the ref calls it off. But like, he was out for a while. Like, he was laying there stiff for a while.
He was out for a minute.
Yeah. So it was absolutely beautiful, and I'm stoked to see if Pereira does move up to 205. Like, there's a lot of pretty great matchups for him up there.
If he did, I think that he would do well in light heavy.
Yeah. I mean, I discounted Jamal Hill during the Teixeira fight, but like seeing that, I'm not going to discount him again. But, so if
all respect to the legend Teixeira, but he he's an older dude. He's an older cat, and he had just gotten the belt. It wasn't like he was reigning champ for.
But he had just gotten the belt in what I thought was a war with somebody who I think is going to be a major player in that division. I think
wonderful fight.
Yuri, I've been rooting for a minute. I think he's great. He's another one of those guys like Adesanya that's very full on samurai, like full on influenced by the East Asian culture. Like that's his life there. He takes it a bit less cartoony in a positive way. Like I think that cartoony distance that Adesanya has is a healthier way of doing it than the Prohashka's more serious.
I think that Izzy's is, I think he's cerebral. He's
Yeah.
very intelligent. You know,
Yeah.
to fight the way that he does as the style bender, you have to be. And I don't think that he just randomly picks, you know, certain things to do. Like he has a setup for his fights. You saw when he did the Rock Lee,
Yep. Yeah.
and there was a whole story.
With Silva. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was because, you know, he was the underdog in that fight. Even though
Mm-hmm.
Silva was at the later stages of his career, is still the Spider. You know what I mean? And he was arguably one of the first style benders in the UFC.
Yeah.
And Izzy, you know, definitely loved and cherished the record and the influence that Spider had. But I think one of Anderson's Achilles heels is just his confidence. Like
Yeah.
we've seen him do wonderful things with his confidence, like when he was just bobbing and weaving hands down, and homeboy missed like what 5-6 punches,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very reminiscent of Ali, you know. But you see in the first match with Weidman, where he was getting a little too showboaty and got caught with that looping hook. And even though it doesn't look like a powerful punch, it only takes 6 to 9 pounds of pressure to put somebody out if they land clean and you're not prepared. If you don't have any of your muscles tightened, it's like he was too relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very much between Izzy and Spider, kind of like the younger guard moving up. And when Rock Lee hits that pose, it was when he was fighting against
Yeah.
I think it was either Gara or
Yes.
I think it was Gara. And
Mm-hmm.
Gara, you know, ended up becoming one of the leaders of one of the villages. He became the Sands. It's not the Hokage, it's something else. But basically on tier with the Hokage. He was the Hokage of the Sand, but Hokage is specifically for the leaf. Sorry for the lore. If you don't watch Naruto, watch it. This will make sense. But he did the pose, and he did a lot of things leading up to the fight that were very reminiscent of, I know that I'm viewed as the less experienced guy here, but I'm still a beast.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not to be taken lightly. Like Rock, that was one of the things that brought a lot of fans over to Rock Lee's side, and why Rock Lee got his little spinoff is because he doesn't have the ninja-ness that most people do.
Yeah, he doesn't have the
a weapon.
jutsu, right?
He doesn't use any special jutsu. He only has taijutsu, which is the fighting. And people are like, yeah, you could be a good fighter, but most people are known for their techniques. And for him to kind of make his way through a very ninja-esque world with only the base, you know, that everybody starts with, which is the taijutsu, the fighting, you got to be able to defend yourself. But then being able to elevate within the most basic thing, I feel like that's the true mark of a champion, is because you're going to drill these same things that may seem simplistic, that may seem kind of a conundrum, but you realize that every time you do it, you're getting better.
Yeah.
And so I really felt that with Izzy and Spider's showdown, because every time we saw Izzy up until that point, he was getting better and better. And that was one of his big high profile fights where he was fighting somebody that wasn't just, a new contender in the UFC, you know, a professional record with less than 50 fights, you know. So I think that Izzy is a little more heady about it.
Yeah.
I definitely think that Yuri is a fan and has a lot of the traditional Eastern. I think that Izzy is a little more of the modern Eastern.
That's a good way of putting it, rather than cartoony. But
I know you said that because of anime, and anime is typically Japanese cartoons.
And like it's and I say that with no disrespect to cartoons, because I love cartoons. I think that they're one of my favorite art forms, because they don't show things literally, they show things how we experience them. Because we don't see things as they are, we see things coated in a haze of our own emotions, and like the ability to draw out a scene allows you to color it in the emotions of the scene.
Absolutely.
And so I think that cartoons are amazing.
Right. And just the different mediums that they exist in now.
Yeah.
And even if we go back into the early cartoons, they weren't made for kids, like Looney Tunes and Merry Medleys. It was mostly to garner a respect, especially when you're talking from the angle of Walt Disney, for the work that they were doing, because people were just like, oh, this cartoons is for kids and whatever. And Walt Disney's first movie that he released under the studios was a huge hit, but it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You know, even though it was a kid's movie, mad adults went to go see it. And then you look at comic strips, you look at comic books, you look at
I'm a bit jealous that Japan gets these like seriously put together adult cartoons. Like we get adult comedy cartoons here, but we don't really get very often emotionally resident actiony cartoons.
Right. I think the closest we got to that in America was Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
You know
yeah, which is still kind of pointed at kids.
Absolutely.
And he has a huge East Asian influence.
Right. But it had some very adult themes to deal with. Like it didn't get sexual in that nature, but it was these themes were very much, after puberty type.
Decisions. It is in that same style that I do like in anime, because I have this serious problem with anime, and it is that there is a certain rhythm to Western storytelling that I feel when I watch it. When I'm watching anime, I'm stuck in that same rhythm. So when the end of the episode comes, I'm left very disappointed at where it ends.
Absolutely.
And so it's really hard for me to get into most anime. But like, have you seen Mob Psycho? Have you watched that?
Yeah, I just started Mob Psycho.
Oh, yeah?
I've been boycotting it for forever because Mob Psycho is the reason why One Punch Man is no longer a thing anymore.
Oh, really? Is it stopped completely, One Punch?
Yeah, so...
I thought it was on hiatus.
Here's some clarity. The original One Punch Man was made by a guy named One, which is spelled O-N-E, like one. And it was a web series comic strip. 3-panel, super jokey, super funny. But it was very much the same when they made it into the expanded world in manga. All they did was up the artistry.
Yeah.
They kept almost all of the scripting the same and a lot of the storyline the same. Now, they gave some advancements in new characters, more development in the manga, but it was still very much a kind of a jokey type thing. Now, Mob Psycho has a lot of the same feel because it is the same animator.
Yeah.
But the worlds are completely different.
Yeah.
You can see the similarities, between the character of Mob and then between damn it, I just forget his name. Saitama, yeah. And that they're super OP. But with Saitama, there was kind of aloofness, that he didn't really care about anything else besides having a good fight.
Yeah.
And being challenged because he's reached this pinnacle that it seems nobody else around him can achieve. Now, the difference and contrast between Saitama and Mob is scared of his power because he doesn't want to be the most powerful.
Yeah.
He's almost resentful of the fact that he is so powerful because he got those powers naturally just from being who he is. Saitama had to work, and even the regimen that he puts out is kind of a joke as well.
Yeah, because it's I think it's one of the most like poignant things. Like, it's so true.
Right.
Like, all you gotta do is do the basics every day, and you'll be the best.
Right.
But you just gotta keep doing it every day, though, and no one's willing to put in that effort. So I love that his regiment is just do push-ups, squats, and a 10K run every day. But that's actually something I never noticed in the show, that like, Mob is afraid because he didn't put the work in to get it. And so like ungained power is a scary thing where like if you gain your power, then the problem is like, oh, now you're just the best, and it's kind of boring.
Right. And then also if you look at the age difference, like Saitama's past puberty already, is already an adult. Mob is barely getting into that age where he's passing that first threshold of puberty. So he's dealing with a lot more. And I was mad at first, going back to the original conversation, I was mad that the creators invested 100% in Mob Psycho and was just like, you know what? The One Punch Man thing was just a passion project of something that already existed. And people just fell in love with it because the manga was just phenomenal, and then the anime adaptation was almost page for page out of the manga adaptation of the original web series. And so I think that a lot of people just did not have the background and the knowledge of where it came from. And so people like me were very upset when they announced, oh yeah, this is it for the manga. We're not doing the anime anymore. The manga will still somewhat continue, but not until Mob Psycho is over.
Okay.
Like he released, you're familiar with manga, and you know how sometimes they'll have editorial notes where the artist or the animator will write notes to the fans about what's coming, about so on and so forth. So he had like a nice little back page of, hey,
explaining that. Yeah,
he's like, I know you're gonna be mad, but you're gonna like this a lot better. So I'm excited. I'm excited for Mob Psycho. I think I'm on episode 4. Or something.
I'll tell you what, the last season I was in tears the entire time.
Is it over? Did it end?
Yeah, it's 3 seasons total.
Okay. So I feel a little bit better. I thought they were gonna Dragon Ball Z or Naruto this bitch. Like, no, yeah,
they make it very clear at the end that like this is the end.
Nice.
But yeah, it's the whole season.
Well, maybe there's hope for One Punch
Man. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I thought they, after the third one,
I may have misunderstood. I may have misunderstood them saying, "Hey, we're not going to do this until this is done, and then we'll come back." But the way that I read it and the way that it sounded was like, "Yeah, this is more important. You know, this is kind of a joke project anyway." So.
Yeah. That's why I am jealous of Japanese culture for having these cartoons, because like Mob Psycho is a perfect example where the themes in it are so mature, even though it is a kids show, and it gives these lessons that you don't see very often in American cartoons. Like the best we get like is Avatar or like Adventure Time had some mature themes, but like it was shown in like a 10-minute long format where like it was never super deep. I mean, some episodes got me emotional.
It got deep. Like later on into the seasons, like it just, once they introduced Finn's dad, it just, from there, it was just like, all right, Finn's an adult now. We're going to deal with some adult stuff.
His relationship with Flame Princess was the most romantic thing I ever saw when I was a child.
Because he couldn't touch her. And,
right? But yeah, Mob Psycho, I love, assuming that you're at episode 4, have you seen him join the Body Improvement Club?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. He joins a muscle group to start working out just to get better. And like, I love that like moral of the story of being like, yeah, you could be really great at something.
Right.
Get better at other things. Like, keep putting in work to improve yourself. Like that's such a great lesson. There is something I think in like Western media that we miss out on like the morals like that in stories, where like we tend to have a mentality of, just be okay. Like everything's okay. Be okay with yourself. Accept everything. And it's like, no, get better. Why live if you're not getting better? Why, if you're not pursuing something? I mean, there would never be a show like One Punch Man in America where the hero is disappointed because he's too good.
Right.
Like that, like he wants a challenge. Like people in America don't want a challenge. Like they want comfortability. They want hamburgers. That's my view of America. I know y'all aren't all fat, but I was inspired by our culture. That's the thing. Like, I am a victim of our slacker culture. I always say I was never a Seth Rogen fan, but for some reason I associate it with Seth Rogen, the Seth Rogen slacker culture that infected my brain as a youth, that says like, don't be good at anything, don't pursue anything, get by. Put as little effort as you can into life and just get by.
I'm curious, why is Seth Rogen the
I have no idea.
Because Seth Rogen has been active for a very long time, and he's been behind the scenes doing stuff. He's been an activist.
It definitely wouldn't be him as a person. Yeah, it would be the characters that he plays.
Right. Well, he's a stoner guy, and the stoner laugh is iconic. You can't get away from that, but I think that he still does a wonderful job in the roles that he has. Like Knocked Up, I did not think Knocked Up would touch me emotionally the way that it did, just because of how forward and crude a lot of the scenes are. And then, but it actually is a great overview of American culture and American relationships, and how we end up in situationships. I think the noble thing about that movie is that Seth Rogen's character finally decided in the movie, hey, I don't have to give up everything of myself, but I do need to make some sacrifices to
Yeah.
make room for this new life that's coming
Mhm.
in. You know, the earthquake scene where she's very pregnant and it's a bad earthquake because they're in California. Um, and the first thing he grabs is the bong
Mhm.
and then races outside. And then the cops roll by and he smashes the bong because the cops roll by.
Mhm.
And he's like, oh no, my bong. And then, of course, you know, the pregnant, Katherine Heigl comes out of the house and is like, hello.
Mhm.
And he's just like, oh, are you all right? And she's just like, dude, you know what I mean? But by the end of the movie, you get to see, especially the conversation he has with his father, that really kind of opens his eyes because he's like, I'm not ready. And his dad's like, none of us are, dude.
Yeah.
You know, and as a father, I could speak to that. Like, there's nothing in this world that will prepare you for bringing life into this world and then having to nurture that life to become a good human being and
Mhm.
a contributing member to the society we want to see. I do have hope for the future and for the kids.
Yeah.
But Seth Rogen has my respect, man.
Yeah.
Between
I
I saw him in Donnie Darko and didn't realize it was him. And then I was like, yo, what? I also looked back in the movie, figured out that Ashley Tisdale is also in Donnie Darko.
Oh,
She's
really?
like 10 years old.
Yeah,
It's
like I said,
hilarious.
I never even watched his movies growing up, so I don't know why I associate him with that. I'll tell you what, man, I
Have you never
love
seen
Freaks and Geeks.
Okay, I was about to
Yeah,
say,
I was
like,
yeah,
come on, man.
yeah, Freaks and Geeks, him, and all of them,
Freaking,
that whole
yeah,
cast. In fact, the little
just,
brother in that
yeah,
makes great movies now as a director.
yeah.
Yeah, he made the incredible Burt Wonderstone. I think
Yo,
he made the Vacation remake, but
okay.
he was in Waiting. I think he may have written
Yo,
Waiting.
Waiting,
Um,
that is the movie. Like, I knew about Ryan Reynolds, but that was the movie that
that
made me
made me
fall
a
in love
Ryan Reynolds
with
fan.
Ryan
Yeah,
Reynolds, bro.
it's so good. I love movies that are day in the life movies.
Right.
Like Clerks is one of my favorite movies,
Hell yeah.
and Waiting has that same vibe. There's a
It
movie
really
called
does.
Slam Salmon by the Super Trooper guys. That
Oh, by Broken Lizard?
yeah,
Man.
that's just like a day of them working at a restaurant that's owned by like Mike Tyson parody, and he's like threatening to beat up whoever gets the least tips in the night. It's fantastic. I just love single day movies where you get to see what's going on, and the stories often don't get resolved, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what's great about it.
Because that's what life's like.
Yeah,
Like, there's not always a resolution,
yeah.
you know?
I also tend to just like small scale stories in general, because like when things get too big scale, you stop having any character growth. Like
Mm-hmm.
when the character should be the most important thing in the story. I think the way
Right.
that the main character changes, so that we as the audience can be like, oh, maybe I should make that same change in my life. I think that's the whole point of stories, is to learn from other people. And so like when stories get these big like oh, big like chaotic stories where like the focus isn't somebody's life and their changes and their
Mm-hmm.
relationship, then it stops being as relatable.
Right. When, like Game of Thrones, where there's so many characters, it's really hard
Yes.
to kind of keep track.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the power of the character and of storytelling, is making it all affluent and make sense and blend together.
Yeah. There's stories like that tend to be like, I think they work better when you
Read them
watch
in the
them
book.
season long, because
Yeah.
you get the whole story, where like episode by episode, you're not getting the actual lessons. Where like, I think that the death at the end of the first season is one of the best learning moments,
Right.
because you learn like
Nobody's safe.
honor's not going to get you anywhere.
And
you can be as
nobody's
honorable.
safe in the show.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Like, we're taking out Sean Bean. And I was
Yeah.
like, this fool dies in
Everything.
Like,
Yeah. How did we not see this coming?
I know, right? I wanted him to live so bad because he figured it out. And we are like, come on, Ned. Like, tell
Yeah.
somebody. Oh.
Yep. There's a few shows. I recently rewatched Breaking Bad with my dad, because he had not actually watched the whole thing. He had seen bits of it when it was on, and I didn't realize from the beginning how much I hated Walter White.
Right?
The first time I watched it, I was on board. I was rooting for him. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sure, why not? If teacher turns drug dealer, great. But on the second watch, from the beginning, you see all his ego,
Yeah,
and you. I
absolutely.
didn't realize on my first viewing that even the first time he meets Jesse, he blackmails him into
Yep.
working with him. I
Yep.
thought that they had a mutual agreement at the start,
No,
but no, from the start, he's like, "You're gonna cook for me, or I'm gonna rat you out to the
pretty
cops,"
much.
and it's like, bro, yeah,
You definitely see the dynamics of power
yeah,
from the jump. I think that what I liked about Walter was that he was kind of a mad scientist.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, and he knew it. You know, and that I think that was the hubris, was that he was very, very
yep,
intelligent and he knew it, and he definitely thought that because he came from this different background of academia and whatever, he'd be able to get over on these guys
yep.
who he was moving into the world. And so when he created the Heisenberg persona, he thought he was all big and bad and whatever, until he runs into Gus, you know, or even before that when he runs into the
Tuco.
to Tuco. But you know, if he didn't have the suburban man teacher background with a very strong residency in his area where people knew him and knew him in the community, oh, he's a great guy, he's a science teacher, he can't do anything wrong, oh, poor Walter, he has cancer, and blah blah blah. And I think it isn't until the last season when he finally has the honest conversation with his wife and tells
About
her,
like, yeah,
and
this
tells her,
I
you know what,
wanted this.
it was for me.
Yeah.
It was for me. I kept saying that it was for you guys. I kept saying it was for the cancer, you know, and making sure you guys were good. But like you said, that character development over the time, it definitely really hit you. And not to take away from the amazing performance
Mm-hmm.
that was put on by dang it,
Bryan Cranston,
Bryan Cranston,
and
but Jesse's
Jesse
character,
Pinkman too. Yeah,
yo,
I mean that whole cast
oh my
are
God.
they're another level, like
Right.
their performances. And yeah, Jesse, I think they were planning on killing Jesse at the end of the first season, and then the writer's strike happened, and they kept him around.
Right. And it was a, you know, it was a character that everybody was like, oh, he's just going to be a sidekick the entire time. But as you get into seasons 3 and 4, you start to see him trying to break away from that bondage that was formed
Yeah,
very early on. Because even after the blackmailing, you see when Jesse actually was happy, even though his girlfriend was
yeah,
super into heroin or whatever. And Jesse got clean and then was going to try and get her clean. And then freaking Walter lets her die,
Yeah,
and then tells Jesse, "Oh yeah, she overdosed and whatever," and then doesn't tell him until later when Brian.
yeah, it's like the last thing he says as
One of the
Jesse's
last
being
things.
taken away
Right.
into slavery,
right, for the cartel.
and it was so unnecessary.
It was.
Everything's over.
It really was.
And he just had to say it just to stab him one more time.
But I like the redeeming quality at the end. If you've not seen Breaking Bad, you might want to pause it because this is a fat spoiler. But his redemption, where he saves Jesse and then, you know, obviously falls on his sword because he knew he wasn't going to make it out, but then also destroyed everything that he created so it couldn't be replicated. And reality was that he left his legacy to Jesse because he was the only other person who knew the cook.
Yeah.
You know, so very interesting. A very great kind of overview of how people can find themselves falling into the street life, and that people could literally come from any background into this. And, you know, I've met people who I thought were very affluent in business, and it turns out, you know, they slanging that yay. And I was like, oh, damn, like, you don't present yourself in the way that media presents drug dealers.
Yeah.
So it kind of, I think Breaking Bad was great for society to kind of shift the focus of, okay, let's change the idea of what a pusher looks like, of what a pusher acts like, of what a pusher sounds like. Now, there were some themes that still remained, like the influence he had over Jesse, much less being a relationship that Jesse wanted, because you could see that Jesse, even within their first meeting, he was like, I remember you.
Yeah.
You know, you changed my life in a certain way. You know, you taught me how to be better at chemistry, which now I use now. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a good product, but at least he was still making products, and he had a little bit of a crew. He had a cookhouse, you know what I mean? And he was, quote unquote, going places. However, when he found out that the cook could be made more pure and so on and so forth with Brian, there was already at the jump this attachment that Bryan Cranston's character had to Jesse Pinkman, and he really was the Robin to his Batman. Like, he could not exist without him at that point, you know, because he was making him do a lot of the runaround tasks, assembling a crew, this and that, and basically saying people don't see me unless they're the heads of the business and what have you. So yeah, Brian was definitely a piece of shit in that show, but he was a relatable piece of shit.
Yeah.
And it kind of spoke to a lot of us that, you know, who may set out for these ambitions and kind of not really give a fuck who gets ran over on our way there.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things that I think drew everybody in, is that, like, we admire ambition in people. We like to see people, even if it's ambition for something terrible, we prefer somebody to be ambitious towards evil than to not be ambitious at all.
Right.
Like the person who's unambitious, it's like you don't even exist, really.
Yeah.
You're not making your existence in the world.
It's capitalism, man.
Yeah.
It's capitalism. You know what I mean? Like, people idolize Scarface, you know, Al Capone, who accumulated a vast wealth and basically didn't get caught until they were like, oh, taxes. Yeah. And that's pretty much how they brought down the mob in the 80s anyway.
Yeah.
Taxes. Like, oh, taxes. It's like, we can't, nobody's going to
a lot of money going around.
And, yeah. Racketeering and laundering.
So we have reached the end of the episode here.
God damn.
I always...
that was fast.
Yeah, right? Fast, and like, yeah. I had to cut it off, or else we would keep going for another hour talking about movies and stuff. So good conversation, man. I always give an opportunity at the end of the episode for my guests to shout out anybody, any music artists, any visual artists, in your case, maybe you know some local film directors or something that doesn't get any recognition. Anybody who you think needs more eyes on them, go ahead and shout them out right now.
Heck yeah, man. First and foremost, I believe in putting yourself on before anybody else. So if you didn't already know, I'm pretty sure it's on the screen somewhere. But yeah, it's Tui Da Shark at everything. Follow me everywhere. I'm everywhere. But I really want to give shine to somebody who really helped my creative process visually.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give a shout out to my man, Jun Shimizu. Y'all could follow him at, I just forgot his Instagram, even though like I stay stalking this fool's page. Memory Lines at Memory Lines. It'll be here somewhere. Check him out. He is an amazing visual director coming out of K-Town. And it's funny because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. His father is also a very notable photographer, something with photos. That guy, my brain, I don't know. But yeah. Check out Jun Shimizu. Follow that bloodline to his father. It's beautiful stuff. I also want to shout out my man ACAP holding me down from the jump. Shout out Izamari also holding me down from the jump. A couple artists that y'all should be on the lookout for and for watching for new music and stuff. Besides your man here, I want to shout out 3 people specifically. First and foremost, I want to shout out my man Thies. Look him up at This Is Thies, ThisIsTheez. A wonderful artist, wonderful rapper, bars for days, amazing deliveries. I also want to shout out my man Hippie C at Everything Green on Instagram. Another wonderful artist who I think is doing it in his own unique way. A wonderful, wonderful artist, a wonderful lyricist. He just released a project called Youth Fountain. Check that out. And lastly, I want to shout out my sister from another mister, Unspoken Views. If you haven't heard of any of these artists, I implore you to check them out. Check them out. I don't support whack shit. I mean, obviously I'm here with Kid, so you know it's real. Thank you guys for watching.
All right, awesome. I'm gonna give a quick shout out to a comedian. I don't even know his name, but he's on Instagram as the Big Rad Machine. Rad as in like radical. He makes some funny jokes. I saw a clip of him earlier and I thought I'd say something. He probably doesn't need this shout out. I think he's more popular than I am. He definitely is more popular than I am, but like it doesn't matter. He's cool. I like him. He makes me laugh. He likes pop punk music. I like pop punk music. So with that is the end of the episode. Tui, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Hey, man, it was a pleasure and an honor, man.
Yeah, it was great, man. Thank you so much. Everybody else, have a great night.
I'm feeling blessed. Tell me, how are you? Just let me know if there's anything that I could do. Yeah, I'm feeling blessed. Tell me, how are you? Ain't no button change the world like I'm certain to.